Hi there, it's me, Brett Fish. Welcome to another episode of Race with Me. And in this one, we're going to be looking at showing up at a meeting, protest, or conversation that is not about you. So this one is about showing up at a meeting, a conversation, or a protest that is not directly about you. And I want to take it away from not being about you because I think it is about you. Because these are opportunities for us as white people to learn, to grow some empathy and understanding and compassion. And where it comes from is the sense that a couple of years ago there was a big march to get rid of Zuma, President Zuma in South Africa. And it was the first march in South Africa, or the first protest in South Africa, where white people really pitched up in numbers. And what seemed to be the reasoning or the cause for that was that President Zuma's presidency was starting to really seriously affect white people, or the wealth of white people. It was starting to affect the country, and so white people got involved because it directly affected their bank balances, their future, their current working conditions, or whatever. And that's okay. Protest things that affect you is okay. But if you're only ever protesting things that are about you, or you only protest injustice because now it has finally reached you, then I want to encourage you to look beyond that, to go to meetings, conversations, spaces where issues are being discussed that don't directly affect you. And they will affect you because justice affects all of us, but they're not specifically about you. It's not about your area. It's not about your bottom line. It's not something that affects white people. And so maybe there's a meeting about sanitation in the township. And I'm not saying go to all the protests, go to all the meetings, because often there are so many, and that might be overwhelming. We don't all have the time or capacity. But I'm saying if you've never been to one, start by going to one. When you hear of a concern in the greater community that is about homelessness, follow the story, pick up the story, and then go to a meeting so that you can support just by showing up. But also, you've got a voice. You can voice it. You can use your white privilege in those spaces to be a white voice that is encouraging, cheerleading, backing up what's happening. Don't take over. Don't make it about you. But there are ways in which that can work for you. And the interesting thing for me, and it was devastating and heartbreaking and not surprising all at once, was when this protest happened against Zuma. There were photographs of white people that brought the person who cleans their house or looks after their kids, or maybe their gardener. They brought them to the protest to hold their signs. There were other pictures of white people kind of with their lattes and their high fashion. I remember seeing someone in heels. I remember Black Twitter going wild on white people in heels at a protest, because that says something about how you think the protest is going to go. It says you're not expecting there to be a lot of running away from rubber bullets from the police. And there's something deeper in there that we can explore. But for me, it really felt like this protest thing was a day out. It was an event. It was something to be celebrated. It was like, oh, look, we've got our signs. We're gonna be protesting, and we're gonna speak to black people, and we're going to Shoshaloza, and we're going to raise our fists and do all that. And there was a sense of firstly, this is the first protest that really affects us. That's why we're showing up. But even beyond that, there was a sense of, oh, let's go do this exciting thing. Now, hopefully you are aware that there are a lot of protests in South Africa that don't go like that. That are protests where people would never go to wearing high heels, because there's a huge possibility that at some stage police are going to open fire with rubber bullets, water cannons, tear gas, things like that, and you want to get away as quickly as possible. And so, just from my own experience, some of the things that I've done, I think I mentioned in a previous video, I went to a vigil for Sinoxolo, who was a woman who was murdered in Khayelitsha. It wasn't directly about me. It was that community were mourning they were mourning the death of someone, they were mourning the conditions that they lived in, but it did affect me. because it was a justice issue and it affected South Africa. And so while it didn't directly have bearing, it wasn't a family member, it wasn't anything I was personally going to get something out of in a sense, there was so much for me to learn and for me to experience and for me to witness. And that event definitely helped me grow in compassion, a little bit of understanding. During Fees Must Fall, during the second year of Fees Must Fall, I was volunteering with an organization called More Than Peace. And so we got these white bibs and we were in spaces at the universities and in other public spaces where things could possibly get violent or get out of control. We were there to witness, and we were there to hopefully de-escalate what was going on. And I remember there was a march or protest in town that got a little bit out of control. The police started firing rubber bullets, and a group of us, everyone just scattered. We were running around the city trying to find a place to hide, and the police were literally driving around the city, or private security or whoever it was, firing rubber bullets at people. And I remember being huddled behind a car. I think there were about 6 of us. My friend Lee, who is a white woman, and I think everyone else were people of color. And these police, we could see them driving up and down the roads and shooting people. And the car ended up about 2 meters, it came up our road, ended up 2 meters away from us. And I was at the back, well, maybe because I was the most scared, I don't know. But I happened to be at the back of this group in the space in terms of where the car was. Lee was at the front. And she is not like a big, daunting, physical woman. But what she did was she stood up between the police and between this group of people of color with her hands in the air, with her white bib saying, witness, More Than Peace, and used her white privilege. And the police did not fire, even though we'd seen them in the next road, we'd seen them firing at black people. And I was at 1 or 2 instances at the universities where tear gas was fired. And so this is not me dropping down my credentials. I've been to all these things, because I have been to very few things. And I didn't get to volunteer as much as I wanted, but I was in spaces where tear gas was fired. Fortunately, not directly. I was in a space really far away from where it was fired, and it still got into my eyes and my throat. So I can only imagine what it's like when you're face to face with that stuff happening. And so the varsity things were things that didn't affect me directly. Fees must fall. I'm not going to university. I'm not trying to get my fees reduced. I don't have family members that are trying to get in, but it does affect me because I'm a South African, because it was about justice, because it was about people in the country that I care about. And so this invitation to go to things where there might be a cost, where it might be uncomfortable, but where there are huge spaces for learning, for growing empathy, for compassion, and there's something extremely valuable in terms of the learning experience, in terms of starting to really realize where we stand as white people in this country, the privilege that we have, the power, the representation, what our voice holds. When we step into a meeting or a conversation or a protest that is about an issue that is not directly related to us, there's so much value for us to be able to get a glimpse of what South Africa looks like, what the real issues are like, listening to other people telling their stories, listening to the demands, to the cries, to the seeing the anguish on people's faces. I think another space where we kind of saw this happen in a good way was when Uyenene, the student, was murdered at the post office in Claremont, and it kind of linked to the whole Me Too movement that was happening in the States and online all around the world, where women stood up and men stood up alongside them, but it seemed in that moment, the response to that seemed to be everybody. It seemed like a lot of white people really joined and got involved in that protest. And I think it's probably because of the aspect of it being women and how that affected so many people. But we saw white people showing up at that. And that was one moment where it seemed like, oh, maybe this is South Africa coming together to really make a difference and to really do this. And we need to see more of that. And so I want to encourage you, if you've never been to something, or if you haven't been to something for a long time, you're on social media, you see there's a protest happening, you see there's a meeting happening, it might be relating to the homeless, it might be relating to townships, it might be relating to education in the Cape Flats. To go, to presence yourself, to start pitching up at these places, to show alignment with your friends, to show allyship, and to just say, I'm interested in this, I care about this, because it affects you, not because it directly affects me, but I want to show support to these things. And so that is how this is like an advanced stage in a sense of overcoming of discovering our anti-racism. But overcoming our racism will start to happen when we step into places that are not beneficial to us because we want to understand and learn and be better. And so I want to encourage you to do that, to be on the lookout for something that you can step into, stand in the back, stand on the side, don't grab attention, but just listen and try to understand what's going on and show your support by pitching up.